welcome everybody. And let me introduce to you Aiden, Addie Swallow.
Well, okay, so thank you for introducing me. Yeah, I used to be a congressional candidate, but as I was going through and I met the different candidates, I decided that that really wasn't worth, in my opinion, the race of doing it. Because even if I won, was I really making the impact that I was looking for? And a couple of my friends, asked me a question, and they asked me, do I want to make a broader impact or a deeper impact? And really, the answer was I wanted to make a deeper impact. I got into politics because of the inauguration in January, and I wanted to make a difference, not just get into the political system and just kind of keep going. And so, that's not really my thing. I've already have nearly 20 years in the Army. I didn't want to do that. So instead, I decided to switch to legislative district run, and because I felt like that would be a better impact on the community. And I've lived in, not only have I traveled back and forth to Sierra Vista, but I've lived in Cochise County since 2019. So I kind of know the area, and and I was coming back here all the time because I was intel in the Army. So I was here all the time anyway. So I decided to do that, and I was the only one who could have done that. So I decided that that was the right move. And ever since then, it's been kind of cool. It's The connections I made as a congressional candidate definitely helped, but the campaign's been going it's been going pretty strong. It's weird how before it was kind of difficult, but then now there's a lot more people kind of jumping to try and help, and that's really nice, honestly. And then now I have a running mate in Jackie Anderson, and I was able to meet her at the fair, the Santa Cruz Fair. I wasn't able to be there all days, but I went there for a little bit and I was able to meet Jackie. And so she's pretty cool. And then, of course, Ryan Slauson's running for Senate. So so in theory, if all of us got elected, we would flip all the seats, which would be a really big turning point, I think, for not only the district, but for the state as a whole. Now onto my key platform stuff. I know that a lot of people, and it's been hard because, like, obviously as a congressional candidate, I had focused a lot on federal issues, right? Well, as a state candidate, I'm really kind of pushing away from the federal issues. I know that that's what everyone wants to talk about, and I'm always there to talk about it. Like, we can always talk about all the federal problems that are going on, but those federal problems don't always directly impact Arizona. And so my focus, although I have an opinion, and it's even on my website what my stance is on certain federal problems, the focus is really the state problems, right? Because while the federal stuff might impact us sometimes and maybe down the road, the state impacts will affect us directly, right? And the what the representatives and senators that we've had in the past have done is basically set us up for failure now. And all of our water issues, all of our school issues, all of our funding issues is because of them. And all the other people, all the other representatives and senators who voted the same direction that they did. And so it's time, I think, to make that change. And so I focus primarily on water issues, which is a very complicated issue. I feel like I can never know everything about it, but I focus on water issues, the school voucher issues, and the funding to schools in general, and why we're ranked so low, and the lack of funding that we have when it comes to school. The accountability of our current politicians is another big one. I That's another big focus I have, about the fact that all the bills that they've introduced have been, quite frankly, pretty bad for the most part. Sometimes they sound good, and then that's one thing I learned as a politician, is the bill might be named something good, it might even have a good summary, but then once you dive into it, it's riddled with traps or bad stuff normally. And so that's how they kind of get stuff passed without people realizing the damage that they're doing. And they've been doing it for a long time. And they're not the only ones. It's other people who do that as well, but they've been doing that for a long time. And So those are the main issues that I've been focusing on. And I think the first thing I want to do, if I were to be elected and get into office, the immediate thing I can do is really try to affect the budget, right? The budget's voted on, I believe, a yearly basis, and or at least they did just vote on it last year, and I believe they did the year before, but I could be wrong on that. But the budget is something that I think that we really need to hone in on. I've been in a few of the meetings, and some of you are probably a bit more knowledgeable on it because you've probably been involved in some of those. But um, the budget, I think, is a huge problem because that's where a lot of our schools are losing their funding. That's where a lot of funding from different programs are being lost is with the budget. And I know that they had some wins with this last budget, but it's obviously not where we want it to be. So I think the budget is something immediately that I can impact because I would be a positive, progressive, democratic vote as opposed to the majority, which has been the either MAGA or highly conservative Republicans that we have. So the budget is so that's a big one that I want to do immediately. Another thing that I want to do immediately is and it was actually kind of interesting because I was at the Adelita event a couple days ago, and not only did she remember me, which was kind of fun because we only had one debate, well, not really a debate, we only had one speaking session together. Not only did she remember me, but she introduced me to the crowd. And she talked about, which is something that has been on my website for a while, and so I'm glad that she brought it up. She brought it up the fact that a lot of people are going to lose health care. And some hospitals are in danger of being shut down. One of those, I'm worried about the Safford hospitals, for example. I'm worried about I'm less worried about the Sierra Vista Hospital because I think that they might last, right? But I'm worried about the smaller county hospitals, Safford being one of them. I'm sure Benson's probably in a similar boat. I don't know all the different places, but if one place is having a problem, I can guarantee more than one is having the same problem. Um, but I'm worried about it, and not only the hospitals, but I'm also worried about people losing their health care, right? I mean, I'm 100% VA, so I have my health care, right? And I want to make sure everyone else has their health care too. I think healthcare is a birthright, not a you have to, do something in order to have it. It should be everyone has healthcare. And so um, one of the initiatives that I want to do, and I'm trying to collaborate with Adelita on this, especially because she's hopefully will be the next congresswoman, maybe potentially sworn in by Friday. We'll see. Um, or by next Friday. Anyway, um, I want to create an initiative where a nonprofit or either a nonprofit I create or a group of nonprofits, I'm trying to meet with Chiricahua to actually talk to them about potentially sponsoring or helping to sponsor this as well. But a program where we instead use um, money to pay for the medical needs that people have. So it's not a insurance negotiator, it's not a health provider, it's none of those, right? And the reason I wanted to phrase it that way is because I don't want to follow under the red tape, right? That's where a lot of these programs fall under is red tape. And this is like an emergency response to people losing their health care. And so I don't want to deal with red tape. I don't want to deal with these problems. I just want to be able to have an organization that when somebody needs to pay for this surgery that they need, or they have insurance, but maybe they don't need this life-saving care, or maybe I mean, maybe even trans people who lose their health care. I mean, the list honestly goes on, right? And this would be able to provide funding for those services that they need to be able to continue to having a legitimate and fruitful life. So that's the kind of initiative that I'm looking to do, and it wouldn't be in theory, it wouldn't be long term. It would be to stop the initial trauma that honestly everyone's about to experience come next November. Everyone's going to experience it, whether you have healthcare or not. We're all going to be affected by it, especially if hospitals start closing. So it's something that I think really it's all that we can do. And so I'm hoping to partner with a few people. And like I said, I've reached out to Adelita. I'm going to be talking to Chiricahua. I'm going to be trying to get some other people on board for this kind of solution. But this is the kind of stuff that I think our representatives and our senators should be doing, is looking to solve issues that directly impact the community that we're in, not necessarily padding their pockets or staying in office for literally decades for some people. I don't think that that's does anybody any favors, and they've clearly lost touch. Even if they were good at one point, they're not good now, and I'm not sure when the line was where they stopped being good, but they're not good now. I'm sure they're great people, but their policies are not where they need to be. And I think that's what we need to focus on is policy and making our community better than what it is already. Let's see. I think that's the highlights of you said 20 to 30 minutes. So I didn't realize it was going to be that long, but I'm not sure if I can ramble for 20 to 30 minutes. So I'm okay with opening questions early. That's I think that's most of what I wanted to really talk about. A lot of my information is on A Swallow for az.com. That's where you can get my petitions and donate as well. Oh, actually, there's two more things. My petition, I need about 1,000 signatures, and that's like to be safe. That's not that much, honestly, but I need the signature. I want to try and get all the signatures by the end of the year because starting January, if we don't have anybody if it's just me and Jackie running for state rep, then that means that we can start getting endorsements from organizations because we're the only ones who are going to be in the primary, right? There might not be a primary. And so so I want to try and get the signatures as soon as possible because I already have organizations that are willing to back me up once I get the signatures. So petition signatures are a big deal. I'm primarily using Equal because they can't really argue those. So the link is on there as well as donations. So I chose specifically not to run clean. And philosophically, I think all of us should have to run clean, but my competitors aren't running clean. And now's the moment. If we're going to make an impact, I can't have guardrails, right? I can't have these restrictions of donations and fund matching. And I just can't have any of these restrictions if I'm going to try and make a difference. Maybe after I get elected, sure, re-election, if I decide to, sure, maybe then I'll run clean, right? But like for this moment, I just don't think clean is the way to go.
I don't
So
think any of us believe that at this point it's viable for a clean election candidate in a competitive race, especially in a more conservative leaning district for a Democrat. The Republicans have done a lot over the past couple of decades to hollow out the clean election system, and we all understand that.
yeah.
But you kind of skipped over one of the big parts, just touching on the fact that you were in the armed forces and now you're running for office. But can you tell us a little bit more about your life journey and how you came to where you are today?
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. I forgot to mention that just because I gave you the bio, but you're right. Like not everyone necessarily reads that, but it's also better to say it. Yeah. So I look a lot younger than I am. I'm 36 years old, so I have nearly 20 years in the army. Not 20 years. So if you try and do the math, no, I'm not. I don't have 20 years in the army. I have almost.
16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but I joined the army right at 18 years old in 2006. I graduated high school early actually and joined the army. I got my diploma while I was in basic training, like they sent it to me. Um, and so I joined the army early at 18 years old and from then on, I joined active duty and I was a human intelligence collector. For those of you that don't know, that used to be an interrogator. It changed to human intelligence collector. I was like technically an interrogator for, I don't know, 6 months or something. And then I became a human intelligence collector. But what that basically means that I interrogated people, I talked to spies, I ran, stuff like that overseas. Um, and then I was that way for about for a while, to about 2014 is when I decided to reclass. In that time frame, though, my first duty station was Korea, so I spent a year in South Korea doing friendly force debriefing. So that's I was a little old E4 talking to colonels about all kinds of intelligence stuff, or talking to foreign generals about intelligence stuff. And then after that, I went to the United States, to Washington State, and I stayed there most of the time. We were kind of training up for a BFSB, which I don't know what that is, Battlefield Surveillance Brigade. It's bringing together a bunch of ints and the infantry to kind of raid houses and stuff like that for the surge, basically. I wasn't part of the surge, but I was at the tail end of it. And then after that, after we trained up, I deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan a year later after I came back from Iraq, sorry. Um, and in Iraq, I was in southern portion of Iraq, and I primarily did intel work there, talked to sources, did all that kind of cool stuff. And then after that, I went to Afghanistan where I led a team of intelligence collectors, and we were on a not combat outpost. Forget what it wasn't a cop. It was, I don't remember exactly what it stands for anymore. It's been a while, but it was small base that like got attacked pretty regularly at the edge of the Kunar in the Kunar Valley on the other side of the Korengal Valley. So if any of you who know the seen that movie, or you know the drama that the Korengal Valley was, I was like on the other side of it. So we had a lot of the same fighters that would come over and attack the base and stuff. And then after Afghanistan, I decided I wanted to pursue my dream of being a game designer. So I went to the reserve and I got a bachelor's degree in game design. And I didn't end up doing much with it because I realized I wanted to be an indie developer and not have a boss. And so as I was in the reserve, I just kind of worked on that myself and worked on my degree. But then 2018, the end of 2017, I decided I wanted to also reclass. So I became a counterintelligence special agent with a human intelligence collector as a secondary MOS. And what that meant is I did national security investigations overseas. So I did pretty big national security investigations of U.S. persons who with Army equities who were basically, so I used to work with spies, and now I was basically finding spies in the U.S. That's basically what it was with Army equity. And so that I did a few investigations overseas for that, and I led a pretty big one. I can't talk. I'm sure it's probably adjudicated now, but I don't know, and so I don't want to talk about it. But I led an investigation overseas, and then I came back and I decided, and right then COVID was kind of in its height. And so I went back to Fort Huachuca and I became an instructor until basically I was kicked out like a couple of months ago. Basically that's what happened. And I was kicked out because I was trans, because of the trans ban, which I didn't realize till 2024, but regardless, doesn't really matter. Uh, but yeah, I was an instructor. I taught human intelligence school. I taught counterintelligence school, special agent school. I was the NCOSC, so the non-commissioned officer in charge, because I was an E7, Sergeant First Class. So I was in charge of students. I led students. I taught classes. I also did leadership courses. So I ran budgets. Sometimes $1 million budgets based on because we have to have vehicles, and they did surveillance, and I would teach them how to do that. And so I've done a bit of that. I can't go into super detail, but I kind of gloss over it. So I did that, and then yeah, and then like I said, I was kicked out in 2025. Technically, they're still going through the paperwork because the reserves is always slow, but I was active reserve also at the time. But technically, I'm still not officially, but like the paperwork's all signed. They're just kind of going through the process. So, but yeah, I think that's the backstory. I didn't,
Impressive military career, I got to say, for you to lose it due to the trans ban. And as far as I know, you're the only trans person who's running for office in this cycle. I know there's at least one non-binary person in the state legislature now, as well as gay and lesbian men and women. But you'd be the only trans person, and so it kind of thrusts you into the role of being a spokesperson for the trans community and for fighting back against attacks that are going on right now against the trans community. Can you talk about that a little bit, about your role in that and how you view the civil rights issue of these attacks on trans people?
yeah, I can touch on it. Oh, I mean, but first I want to say, like, I never really intended to be a spokesperson. Like when I started, I didn't think I was gonna be, but I should have known, right? Like I should have. I'm the only one for a long time. I think the only person before me was, I just blanked on her name, but she attempted to win the state she's an amazing person, but I forgot her name. Anyway, it happens sometimes. But yeah, like I'm the only one for a while, right? And so I should have realized it, but I didn't until obviously we started. But to answer your question, I honestly, yeah, I think it's a little bit ridiculous, and it's one of the big things that got me started after the inauguration in January, after the 50 or whatever executive orders that defy science. It's just it's ridiculous to me because they're spreading the narrative of there's some kind of mental disorder, and they're spreading the narrative of it's not scientifically based. And the reality is trans identity has always existed. I have we have documented cases of it back in ancient Egypt before the Bible was written, right? Like trans people have existed for a very long time in leadership roles and in prominent positions. Not only that, but like we have a lot more science than people think we do. We have it's biologically proven, trans people are biologically proven, they are psychologically proven, they're neurologically proven, and they have the historical backing. So really the problem is that a lot of people don't realize they've been indoctrinated by a lot of Western culture coming from Europe, back starting with the Puritan age, and like they've spread a narrative, and now we're kind of seeing the results of that, and now they're trying to come back to that, right? And it's just so to me, it's just ridiculous, right? I'm not going to debate the existence of trans people as people. Like it's just not an art. It's not an argument I'm gonna have. Like I'm not gonna debate the existence of someone that's already been backed up. Like if you don't believe me, you can look at the science yourself.
Especially
Um,
your own right to exist.
so do
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, especially your own right to exist as a
Exactly.
whole human being. Yeah.
Exactly. So like I've had people say like, "Oh no, you can exist, but you just don't go to women's spaces." I'm like, "No, I think you're missing the point. That's not going to be what happens." No. Like I
Mhm.
will go to women's spaces even if it's illegal. I will go to women's spaces. And that's because I am a woman, and whether people see it that way or not. And so it's not really up to me to decide for them. I don't Quite frankly, in a lot of cases I don't care if they believe me or not. It's not really my job to make them believe me. So that's how I kind of stand on it. And I think it's time for a lot of trans people to, and not just trans people, but any marginalized group to stop being like, okay, let's back up and like, no, I'm just not going to. Now that my platform doesn't revolve around trans rights, but I know that inevitably as I'm going, like trans rights will always be brought up because I'm trans, right? I just know it in the papers and everything. That's what they focus on, right? Even though that's not what I talk about most of the time, that's what they focus on. And so I know it's going to come up. I know it's gonna something I'm willing to talk about, but that's not what I'm running on. But at the same point, I know that I will be probably a important piece in that restoring that trans, for lack of a better term, I guess, liberty or freedom, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be a symbol and a spokesperson for, trans issues, yeah, willy-nilly just because of your existence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have some questions. Andrew Kennedy in the chat wonders why you're looking off the camera. You
Oh, my
your
bad.
camera and your screen are not aligned.
My bad. That's getting used to a camera that is right here. I am getting used to because I want to look at myself or look at you, and it's
Yeah.
doing this. So that's me not getting used to it. My bad.
I'm sorry.
I will try to
I
get
didn't
better at it.
I didn't mean to ask that as a question. I just was wishing you'd look over, but then a lot of times people when they're thinking, they do this. They
Yeah.
look off to the side. But
That's
that's
right.
no, that's okay. It's fine.
Well, thanks for pointing it out, Andrea. So now we have eye contact. Hello, Aiden. How you doing? And we got some people with their hands up. Mike, you had your hand up first. Why don't you go ahead and mute yourself and ask your question for Addie?
Okay, hi. Sorry, this is going back to a while ago, and I just don't want to assume that, well, everyone could know this but me, but what do you mean by dirty election?
Say that again.
What do you mean by a dirty election that you're doing? That just sounds like something you wouldn't want to admit.
Not clean. She means,
Not clean. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, so like, I guess what I was saying is I wasn't gonna run clean elections like the program clean elections, not.
Can you
Oh,
explain?
oh yeah, yeah. So what clean elections is basically the state, and I'm not an expert on clean elections, but what they do is they basically you have to qualify for clean elections, you have to have a certain amount of $5 donations or less, or I'm sorry, or more. And they then the state gives you a certain amount of money, and then they also have money matching as well, fund matching. But really, clean elections kind of caps out at about 50 to 60,000, which to me is enough for a state run. The problem is obviously where we are right now. I don't think anyone can win off of just 50 or 60,000, even though I think that that should be enough. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about clean elections has like a restriction, and also like any donations that are above the $5 don't count towards their count, I guess. I mean, you can still use the money, but it doesn't count to it. And there's a cap at the end, right? And I don't know the exact number because I think they finalized the numbers at a certain point. I think, but last I looked, it was like they'll give you 30, I think 35, and then you can fund match up to 56 or something like that. I don't, again, I might be a little washy on the exact numbers, but my point was I didn't want to have that kind of restriction running an election where it's already going to be an uphill battle to begin with. And I didn't want to have that restriction on me. So that's what I meant by clean elections. Not that it was a dirty election. It's just the program's called clean elections.
Thank you. It just sounded wonky, so I wanted to make sure it was.
No, thank you.
Late
Fit it.
90s
Thanks.
with a public system.
No, yeah, sometimes I assume that people understand every part and I'm starting to get better at assume, but I also don't want to sound like condescending where I don't want to explain everything if people already know it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was back in the late 90s, it was a citizens initiative that put this into Arizona law, a public financing system for Arizona elections. Basically, about 10% of the Arizona legislature got caught taking bribes. And so people were a little fed up with that and ran an initiative to establish the system. And since it's been under relentless attack by the Republicans in the Arizona legislature, whittling it down and limiting it in many ways.
Then if I can just paraphrase, basically you're saying, I'm doing what everyone's doing.
Yeah, she's running traditional. We generally call it traditional, not dirty.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. That's on me. All right, thank you.
It's fine.
No. Did you have any other questions, Mike? Yeah. Yeah, he's good. All right, Lillian, I see you have your hand up. Why don't you unmute and ask your question? If you want to turn your camera on, I'll spotlight you for everyone as well.
You have a great background. It's really impressive.
Oh.
I was curious about who you expect your Republican opponents to be. Are they going to be incumbents or will they be people who are running new?
So the most of it's going to be the incumbents. I know that I forgot. I blanked on her name. I could spend 2 seconds looking it up, but I know that there is another Republican running, and I know that Benson, especially for the aluminum plant issue, is really kind of behind her. So I know that there is a new Republican candidate, at least one that I know is gaining some traction. Other than that, it's the same incumbent. So I know Lupe Diaz is running for re-election. I know that David Gowan's coming from the Senate to run back into the state, and I know that Gail Griffin's going from the state to run back in the Senate.
Okay. Do they have military backgrounds?
I don't know their complete background, but as far as I know, no. But
okay,
I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong. They might have some, but I don't know exactly.
so you have the advantage of having a really impressive military background, and they don't have that. That's good. And then you mentioned the aluminum plant issue. What's that?
So Benson specifically has an aluminum plant problem where not only just the state, or not the city of Benson, which has its own problems, but the city of Benson as well is trying to get this plant authorized to be built. The plant is, I was at the meeting before the last one, and basically it's like right across the street, a little bit down the street from a old folks home, as well as it's right near the San Pedro River. But they want to build this big aluminum plant that is problematic because the company that Aluminum Dynamics is already kind of known for not following regulations to begin with. Not only that, but they try to claim that it's going to bring a bunch of jobs, but in reality, and this is all just somewhat speculation from what I've heard from the group and what I've seen. So the exact numbers might be wrong or the exact information might be wrong. But from what I understand, it's going to be bringing very little jobs to the city of Benson. So a lot of problems. So it potentially could cause a lot of problems for the water that we have. It's also pumping a lot of water from the aquifer that's there, which we already have a water problem to begin with, but it's going to be potentially poisoning and sucking water. It's going to be potentially poisoning wildlife and cattle. In fact, one potential constituent who literally lives like they had to expand her. They had to build her a fence because the aluminum plant was going to butt up right next to her yard. So they had to build her a fence, and she raises cattle, right? And and we provide, Benson provides cattle for the whole state, or sometimes other states as well. So that's a problem, right? So that's kind of like like a glossed over version of that issue. It's pretty complicated and it's going through the process now. The people of Benson, I will say, have been very vocal and they've been very powerful in trying to stop this aluminum plant from being built. But it seems like the city and I don't know, other organizations are hell-bent on this thing being built. So we'll see where it ends up going. But it seems like the city of Benson is not for this at all. So
I don't know what kind of aluminum plant this is, but traditionally, if they're processing ore, it takes a huge amount of electricity and a huge amount of water. And that's going to drive up electric rates terribly if that's what they're up to. This is the wrong environment for aluminum plants.
Yep, absolutely. That's what and like the meeting I went to which was filled, like the entire school in Benson was filled with all of us. But the meeting I went to, we talked about air quality, and that's primarily what they talked about. They talked a little bit about water, but it was all air quality. And um it seemed, yeah, the information they had, I wasn't satisfied with, and I know that most of the people in the room weren't satisfied with. And no one's talking about the electrical problem, but I'm sure that that'll come up. I'm sure as well.
Yeah, the
That could be crucial.
Yeah, the resistance in some ways resembles the way that Tucson reacted to Project Blue for some of the same reasons. I mean, an aluminum plant in terms of its energy and water uses is probably worse, in fact, than a huge data center. And in a rural area like that, unless the electric plant is going to extraordinary lengths to build out its own energy and to conserve water, in a desert area like that without a lot of water infrastructure, it's going to be probably relying on groundwater. I don't know, maybe Addie can talk about that.
One of the monitoring wells on the San Juan is already below the acceptable level.
Yeah, I know that they talked
San
about
Pedro.
groundwater. They talked about a lot of different forms of the water, but the aquifer is, I believe, the aquifer that doesn't, I forget the exact word for it, but it's the aquifer that doesn't replenish. And so like that's a worry. And also the San Pedro is already a protected area to begin with, but I guess it's not protected in that area of Benson. Then I guess it cuts off at a certain point where the protections stop. And so they're allowed to do it. And again, there's numerous problems. We could spend the whole meeting talking about the aluminum plant.
You might want to look into that, because here Project Blue just flat lied about stuff, and denied the problems that they would have caused.
Yeah, these guys seem to be a little bit more transparent on it. I think probably because of Project Blue, but yeah, the No Aluminum Plant in Benson group, their Facebook group, as well as they're doing a nonprofit. They're doing a lot of, they're kind of leading the charge on that. I'm really supporting them, but they're really leading that charge, and so I kind of lean on them for most of the information, because there's no way I could know. I don't live in Benson, and no amount of research can change the people who live there, so.
Yeah, but it seems like certainly a potentially politically salient and potent issue there in the district, because, again, you start going after people's source of water and you start raising their electric rates, and they're going to get pissed quick.
Yes.
Susie, you have your hand up. You'd like to ask a question of Aiden?
Thank you. Yes. Aiden, Addie, it's so great to see you here. Have you had any blowback from your being trans? I have a trans member of my family, and we don't we love him, and hope that nothing bad happens just because of who he is.
Yeah.
Do you get from constituents?
Mute there, Susie.
Yeah, so yes and no. Before I even started running for office, I was already getting death threats for being involved in because I'm very involved in Sierra Vista Community Theater. In Sierra Vista, I've also performed at the K Palace, but I'm a theater person, and so I was already getting death threats for being involved in some shows there. So that's already kind of been a normal. That probably shouldn't be the answer, but it's already been happening before I started running. Ever since I started running, the only real pushback I've gotten has been on Facebook or TikTok or those kinds of places in public. I haven't had anybody have the guts to kind of give me blowback in person in public yet. I'm sure at some point it will happen. And I haven't had any targeted like smear campaign against me or anything like that. I'm sure it'll get there. I'm sure at some point. But it hasn't quite happened on that level yet. But as far as social media, yeah, everybody's a, armchair warrior, so they're gonna say what they want to online, and that's mostly what I see when it comes to TikTok and Facebook. So
Yeah. Well, given that you are a non-armchair warrior and you've been under fire in combat, it seems like you're not going to be too flapped by it.
no, I've almost died in combat. Like I have a combat action badge. Like nothing these people can do is going to scare me. And that again probably shouldn't be the best answer that I have, but I'm just not afraid. That's either good or bad. Either way you want to look at it.
Right. Any follow-up there, Susie?
No. How often do you get out to talk to the public?
Yeah, I try to get out as often as possible. I mean, I am involved in the community, and I do volunteer at different like I volunteer for Raise quite a bit, and I volunteer for other organizations, and I go to the theater. But as far as getting out and doing specifically political stuff, the last thing I did, I was at a Blue Jenny event for the DWSEA. I was their special guest. I was at the most recent DWSCA meeting as well, where I spoke for 2 minutes. I try to get out to as many opportunities as possible. I was just at the Santa Cruz, just at the Santa Cruz Fair. I plan on being at the Cochise County Fair. I went to Oktoberfest to see around there, but I can't be everywhere at once. So I try and be as, out there as I can, but it's not always, I can't always be. Oh yeah, and I went to the Adelita event, even though I'm not. It's not my district, but I went to support her either way. So it's just like I try to get out as much as I can. But if people schedule me, I will definitely do my best to be out there. Like I think we scheduled this months in advance. So like I will definitely be at the events that I'm scheduled for. I try and be out there even when I'm not scheduled as much as I can. So.
Okay, and thank you. And Mike Lipman do tell about your theater career.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll tell a little bit. A few years ago, so after some pretty traumatic events with my ex-spouse, I wanted to reinvent myself, and I wanted to really focus on myself. So a few years ago, I started to get involved with the theater, and I remember when I showed up, the director at the time, Jerry Heisner, you guys might know him. He was like, "Well, we have this Christmas parade. You want to come to that?" And I was like, sure. And so I went to the Christmas parade. At the time, I had not realized I was trans yet, so I had just started to dabble in the drag scene, and so I was a drag queen for a while. And so I went to the Christmas parade in a drag outfit, and I was a performer in Bisbee as well as a drag queen for a while. I've been in the Bisbee Pride and the parade every year for the past three or so years. But I was there, and then I auditioned for Godspell, which was my debut show in Sierra Vista. And we changed the music to we got Steven Swartz permission to change the music to a more kind of rock themed kind of music. And so with the same words and everything, but we were able to do it in the style of different music, and we did it with a live band. And so that was my debut. And Jeremy went on under fire then, because at that point they were trying to do a lot of drag bands, which didn't happen because Katie Hobbs vetoed them. But they tried to do a lot of drag bands, and so he went under a lot of fire just having me in the show, because I was in the show as a drag queen, very obvious drag queen. And so, but he wanted everybody to be represented, every single group, every single organization, like not organization, but every single group to be represented in the show. And so I was in the show as a drag queen, and they came under a lot of fire then, and but they didn't care. They still went on with the show. We had a very successful show, and ever since then, and that was my musical debut as well. Ever since then, I've been doing some singing career kind of things as well. But ever since then, I've been in many shows. I was in She Kills Monsters. I was in I can't even remember all my shows now off the top of my head, but I've been in a ton of shows there. I was in the most recent show at the K Palace as well, called uh, where there's a will, greedy relatives are on the way. I was in that one. I played Connie in that one, one of the greedy female wives of all of them were greedy relatives, but I was one of the wife. I was a greedy wife. And in that show. And then now I'm currently in The Producers. For any of you who have seen The Producers, like the movie, it's quite a show. Let's just put it that way. You could do your own research. It's quite a show. But I'm in that show as a ensemble, so I have 3 or 4 different characters. One of them is a controversial character that I'm not going to name on camera, but if you've seen the show, you probably know what it is. But I'm in that show, and we're going to go live in October 17th is the opening for that. And so yeah, that's pretty much my theater. I just can't remember all the different shows. I've been in so many shows that I can't remember, but
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other people with their hands up for questions? Seeing none, I have a question here from George. He says that LD19 has been a stronghold for Republicans for several years, and that's true. It's a heavily Republican district. What do you think the most important issues in your campaign to win a heavy Republican district are?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to point out is to not focus on who I am. And I mean, maybe my military experience, sure, but I think the big thing to focus on is to focus on the fact that these representatives that you've continuously elected for decades haven't done their job. And in a lot of cases made the problem worse. And I think so I don't want to attack the people themselves, right? I want to attack, and I know that they're going to attack me as a person, but I don't want to attack them as a person. I want to attack their policy. And I want to show that I'm here to change the policy that's better for everybody. And in that way, it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or a libertarian. It doesn't matter, because the policies are going to be what affect you more. And so, and in that, the big things I want to focus on are going to be school vouchers, school vouchers, water, and the representatives' lack of accountability and trust that we've put into them for decades now. So those are the big things I want to focus on. Obviously, some other ones are going to be the Benson aluminum plant, but that really only applies to Benson for the most part. I feel like everybody should be aware of it, but really Benson is the only ones that are really kind of on top of that right now, and which is fine. So I'm focusing on the more county, or not county, district-wide issues as opposed to just city issues.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you're going to be running directly against Gail Griffin. She's
Nope.
He's running. I'm running.
State Ledge. George, you have a follow-up?
I was going to say, yeah, Aiden, thank you for running. We do really appreciate it. We really, I'm the chair of LD19, so we're working really hard to make sure you do get elected. We'd like to really flip this seat, and I think it's very possible we can do so. I think Lupe Diaz and your point of issues on the things they have not done is really important. But being that there is a profile of issues in such a large district, mining and healthcare and stuff. I'm glad to see you're focusing down on 2 or 3. So keep in touch. We'll make sure that we get your name out to many places we can.
Absolutely. Thank you, George.
Lillian, you have another question you'd like to ask? Go ahead and, oh, yes, so you're already unmuted. Go ahead and ask your question.
I think your strategy is really smart because people may like these incumbents because they keep reelecting them. They may think they're great guys, but the unfortunate thing is they're part of a machine. And a vote for them is a vote for a continuation of this awful stuff that you're focused on. So it's not liking them. They need to dump the machine. So thanks. I think it's a smart strategy.
Thanks.
Mike, you have another question. Why don't you ask it?
Yeah, this is a charged question, but it's something I'm thinking about lately.
Okay.
Do you self-identify as a progressive?
I have used the word progressive when I talk about who I am, but the problem is that labels are supposed to be expansive, but labels just kind of put you in boxes. So it's hard because if I say I'm a progressive, then people think that they know what that means, but that might not be what I think I know what it means. So do I think that I am a progressive thinker? Yes, but do I think that I would necessarily put it on a platform? I don't know, honestly, because it's a hard question because people think different things when you use different words. So I'm
Thank
not
you.
sure.
No, that was a hard question, but it's what I've been thinking a lot about with candidates lately. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Thanks, Mike. So let's drill down on a couple of those key issues that you focused on. Number one being water. It's a big issue in your district, and Gail Griffin has sort of squatted over any kind of real reform of our water laws for decades now, and prevented any real change. What is your critique of the way that Arizona handles water issues right now, and ideally, especially as regards your district? What would you like to see in the future, and what are you proposing?
Yeah, so this was something that was really brought up at the Blue Jenny, and I admittedly I feel like I can never know enough about the water issue because it's so complex and it's so nuanced. But from what I see, really the big problems are um, Arizona, either the legislators or the congressmen of Ciscomani or any of the people in leadership allowing other either states or organizations come in and basically steal the water from people in the desert who are already struggling with water to begin with. I think that that's probably one of the biggest issues. The other one is water usage, using it for things that maybe we probably don't need to. Like you can't grow every plant in Arizona. You can't, and the more water you devote to something, then it needs to be used for something good, right? So like I know a lot of people will use alfalfa as an example because it takes a lot of water, right? But the problem I have with that is, okay, if you're going to use it and then that's going to benefit Arizona, okay, that's one thing. But if you're using it and then you're selling it into other states and maybe Arizona doesn't benefit from that, well, then I kind of have a problem with that. Well, maybe there might be a better place to do the alfalfa somewhere else, right? Or because I know like different states grow that. So I think that we need to look at what we use the water for. But I think the bigger issue is that the representatives have continuously made these regulations to limit limit the amount of water freedom that individual residents have, and they want to give it to businesses or sell the rights to other people who aren't here to benefit Arizona. And oftentimes they'll disguise that as something of freedom for the constituents when in reality they're either making, I don't want to accuse them of making dark money or something because I don't have any proof of that, but they're either it's the deal seems shady to me is all I'm saying. I don't know exactly what the problem is, but it just doesn't seem like the right solution. So water usage, the regulation, and then a solution, because I like to come up with solutions, and I don't like this as a solution. I'll be honest, I don't like it as a solution, but I think we're at the point now where the water issue is so bad that we have limited options to try to repair it. And we keep trying to do the same thing over and over and over, and it just doesn't work. And I think what we might need to do is something that I experienced when I was deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan, and that's having water shipped in from other places. And that's not entirely something that I want, but I feel like that might have to be a solution to help us with our water issue in the desert. I mean, we even if we figured out a solution now and we fix the water problem now, it's only a matter of time before some of these aquifers run out. And so we need to have a long-term solution that's going to look towards, well, now you all don't have to move. You can still live in Arizona. You can still live in the desert, but you might have to have weekly, monthly, deliveries of big water tanks, and communities might have to run off of certain water tanks that they have in the area. And that comes with its own issues. But I mean, I've seen it work in a deployed environment. I never wanted that to work in the United States, but I feel like that might be one of the only solutions that we have. So.
Can you talk a little bit about your feelings or thoughts on active management areas and the lack of any kind of water management regime in most of your district? I mean, there are 2 active management areas there in Cochise County, but a large part of it is, rural without any kind of control on groundwater extraction. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so some of the bills that I've looked at that either Gail's, like you said, Gail's been one of the big proponents of a lot of the water things, and the other 2 just kind of follow behind her and do whatever she wants. But the big problem is a lot of these bills, either she's either co-sponsored or she has put forward herself. And a lot of them deal with limiting active management areas, like their regulation. I believe one of the bills, and I can't remember, I think it failed. It's on my website, so I can't quite remember the exact number, but I think it failed, but it was going to, actually, no, this one passed, where it said that if you're part of an active management area, there's a singular position that kind of has authority over what you do with it, which I think is probably a problem by itself. You probably shouldn't have one position in charge of the area. And then the lack of active management areas is the problem as well. We need to have more, and we need to regulate this, but not regulate it to where the consumers or the constituents feel the pain of it. The politicians should feel the pain of it. Like, let's just be honest. If I'm a representative, then it's my job to feel the political pain that comes from it and to deal with the paperwork and all that. Like, I shouldn't burden the constituents with that. That should be limited burden to the people who live here and more burden on me or my team, right? And I feel like they're just pushing the burden onto everyone else to do that kind of stuff. So it's the lack of management, and in the places that do have management, they have too much power. So that's what I think is the big problems.
Yeah, I mean, there is pain involved with not being having any kind of active management or any kind of regulation. I mean, if you're next door to a farm that's irrigating 200 acres and you have your private well and you're inside their drainage cone, you're spending $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 to sink your well deep enough to actually get water. That's pain.
Yeah, I would also say, I think, and I don't know the budgetary restrictions of this, but I think something I want to really look into is if your well needs to be dug deeper or something like that. I personally don't think the constituents should have to pay for that. That's just my opinion. I think that should be a state funded project because that's for the lifeblood of everyone who's around there, right? So I don't think individual residents should have to pay for it. But also, when you pay for it yourself, you can do whatever you want with it. So there's definitely there's some things I need to look in with that. But like off the bat, I just kind of feel like the state should have to pay for, expanding or digging deeper when it comes to wells.
Interesting. All right, well, let's talk about the other big issue that you highlighted, and that's vouchers and public education versus private education here in Arizona. What's your concern with vouchers and how you got?
Yeah, so my biggest concern with vouchers is that, quite frankly, it's stealing all the money. Let's just put it that way. It's stealing all the money. All the budget goes to it. And it's not just affecting schools, it's affecting everything else, right? And so like when I have people in, say, Cochise County who their child goes to Buena High School and they have to pay the school because the school can't give them supplies, or they don't have, they take a class that's non-STEM related, which is like, math, social science, or science, like theater, for example, or an art class, or keyboarding, or whatever class that they have that's not one of those main ones. And then when they have to pay, a $20 charge here and a 50, like they're getting microtransactions for their kids to go to a public school.
Yeah.
Like that's already wrong. That should never happen. You should not be paying for school things like other than like paper or pencils or a binder or something like that. You should, parents shouldn't have to be paid. I'm sorry, say again.
Or a bulletproof backpack.
Oh, or a bulletproof backpack. Yeah, that's oof, okay. But yeah, or that. So there's a problem there, but also when we look at the budget, Arizona's public schools are 51st in the country for budget. That's behind the District of Columbia. If you guys were like 51, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's behind the District of Columbia, so we're including that in there. They're the worst when it comes to funding across the entire nation. And then we're 49th in quality. And then sometimes that fluctuates between 50 to 49, whatever. But the point is that we're at the bottom, all right, when it comes to public school quality. And it's not just public school. I would argue private school is just as bad. Why? Because they're not regulated, right? Who knows what they're teaching? Honestly, it's just, to me, it's just an excuse to push religious dogma onto your kids. And if you want to do that, that's fine, but that shouldn't be done in a school environment. It's just my opinion. That should not be done in a school environment. And so I don't think that parents who want to, or are doing it for religious reasons, or a lot of these other reasons that aren't really kind of an exception, they want to do it. They want to send them to these private schools who aren't regulated, or charter schools that aren't regulated, so that they can kind of keep their I don't want to be offensive, keep their kids thinking something that is incoherent with science, or incoherent with the way that the world works. And if they want to do that to the kid, that's fine. They have that choice, right? But I don't think that the state should pay for that. If you're going to do that, you can do that all you want, but the state shouldn't pay for it. And not only that, but we see that bigger cities like Tucson, or mainly Phoenix, where families who are already wealthy enough are getting these vouchers and basically taking all this money to go to a private and charter school, which are very expensive. And so they're taking all this state money that honestly should be going to public schools. I still don't understand why we would fund some of these schools, especially ones that aren't under the same regulation of Arizona curriculum, and who, if they're a religious school, they shouldn't be funded, period. That they can be funded elsewhere. A state shouldn't be funding that. We have a separation there for a reason. So that's my issues with school vouchers. I appreciate the questions. I look forward to hard questions. I appreciate it very much. If you stump me, honestly, I think that that's a good thing. Or if I'm able to not get stumped, that's also a good thing. So I'm not afraid of any kind of communication that way. And I just want to push this again. My website is aswallowforcongress.com. I'm sorry, not for Congress, Jesus. Wrong thing. aswallowforaz.com. And on there, in like 5 seconds after being on there, you get the petition and the donation link. Petition, definitely. I want to try and hit 1,000 signatures by the end of the year. And well, donations, I'm not running Clean Elections, so the program Clean Elections. So if you can and you want, go and donate, but definitely need the signatures. And the next event I will be at will be I believe the LD19 picnic is the most recent next event I'll be at. And I'm planning events, more phone banks and other events after that. So there'll be other things happening in the future. So if you want to sign up for volunteer, or you want to just be part of the campaign, feel free to reach out.
Thanks so much for being with us, Addie. We really appreciate you and appreciate your efforts in running.
Yeah, thank you.